pretty interesting. I see a number of familiar faces in the room, and although I'm dressed in a suit, most of you would have seen me in probably shorts and t-shirt. Does anyone still remember me? Any? Good to see there's a few, and there's probably a lot of new faces that don't know me at all. So, what I'm going to do is we're going to take this trip down memory lane, and see where all of this began. Does this come up on the... Oh, it comes up on the side screens? All right. Well, this was the company that I established, Adventure Asia International. As I said, we're going down memory lane and where it all began. But what I'd like to do is give it a little bit of my background and how do I find myself here and what gives me the credentials in order to have been running these sorts of events. Okay, I think I've already had the introduction. Pretty much throughout my life I've been involved in pioneering activities and adventure. It's certainly what I love, and I've got a great passion for endurance sports. Over my life, I've completed 4 Ironman competitions and ended up in the World Championships. A little picture of me there on the bike. Pioneered mountain biking in Nepal. When I started in Nepal, we were the only mountain biking company, and that we had the privilege of lasting for a number of years. Today, there's over 30 or more suppliers of mountain biking. Run a number of marathons. And this time last year, I found myself in the English Channel, swimming from England to France. So there's just a little bit of my background. Moving on, education. I've got this great love of sport, which I've just demonstrated. The other love that I've had has been education. I was lucky enough to meet a man called Robert Kiyosaki. Does anyone here, has anyone heard of Robert? Yeah, quite a few hands. Anyone not? Obviously, yep. Well, Robert probably currently is best known for his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I knew Robert well before this, and we had the opportunity to work and study together. Actually, I was the incompetent one in the room, and I put myself pretty much apprentice to Robert to learn as much as I could with this man, because he had really, at that time, the cutting edge information about personal development. And I certainly was highly influenced by what Robert was doing, and it was a result of my contact with Robert that really drove me to be able to combine these activities and really start putting together this concept of adventure training. The other gentleman, probably even less known, is a man called Buckminster Fuller. You've got a pen and pad on your desk, write the name down, just write Bucky or Buckminster. Google will bring it up pretty quick. And just see what this man has done over his lifetime, although he has passed away now, but an incredible contributor. We've lost our slides there a little bit. Okay, next one. And there's Buckminster Fuller. The contributions to the planet that this man has made is just beyond explaining. So let's take a look at some of the, let's call them milestones. With Adventure Asia coming into the country in 2003, and really what did we do? So in fact, I arrived 24th of December, Christmas Eve, on 2002, with my family. And we started to kick things off in 2003. That was just after the new peace accord, and I thought that this was a very fertile time to come into the country and kickstart something that the country had been deprived of for a long, long time. What did that involve? Well, the first thing was to get familiar with the country. So I took a reconnaissance of a large part of the island just to find out more about it, and where we could potentially find some places to operate from, offer our tourism activities, operate our training programs, and just by chance, after spending 2 weeks touring the island, on the way back into Colombo on the last evening, we stumbled across a little place in Hunwella, which was being operated as a little sleepy motel that people came to on weekends, a little getaway, and right there, that was going to be our new home. So as time developed, we got in there, and I should say that that site that I'm so familiar with and that we kicked off and ran so many programs from is where Shea Adventure Park is now operating. And I must say that what I've seen since arriving back in the country is they've taken it to a whole new level. So the next milestone was to really transform the site. What we were looking at was really an ideal location, but it needed to be transformed into running programs and accommodating a lot of people. You had to put on different sort of glasses to recognise the potential of the property. For years and years, it had only been seen as a little motel site. Here I came in with a different perspective, and within a short time, I could see all of the attributes of the property that was going to make this a great home and a great training base. It's a little ironic when I stopped to think about it. I was looking at a property that had where its potential was unknown and been unrecognised. In the years to come over the next decade, we were bringing in thousands of people whose own potential was yet to be realised. So we had that interesting little mix of a property and people and having a bit of a history together. So what needed to be done? We had the property, there was a few cabins there, the beach was there. We built a longhouse in order to run the programs from, and I know there's people in the room that are very familiar with the longhouse and how we run our programs there. We had to build amenities, kitchen, in order to be able to run programs, feed, sleep everybody. The rock was there, Asmadala. Coming from Australia, I guess the nearest thing I could compare it would be Ayers Rock. But that rock took a long time to come to terms with. Over centuries, it had become overgrown. We had to cut it back, and with each cutting back, there was another discovery. And this rock, Asmadala, is one of the gems of the property down at Hunwella. There was the river. We know a lot about the river, but the river just offered so much, the Great Kalani River. There was the pathways, jungle pathways that we had to cut out. There was rubber estates, which became a great playground for when we started operating paintball, orienteering, and just a great place to explore and get between the base and the rock. We had to build the activities. There was a whole range of things that had to be put in place, and we're going to be showing you photographs of what was developed as we proceeded on through the decade. High ropes, climbing, the rafting, kayaking, and a range of games on the property itself. That's not to say that we weren't faced with a lot of challenges. This was a new venture, and yes, there was a number of hurdles that we had to jump over in the end. A little quick one that is very memorable was having to deal with some of the locals, where I saw this glorious beach that we could land our rafts on, and how they looked at it, they saw beautiful dollar signs because they could take the sand from the beach and sell it. So there was always a little tussle there about us trying to keep the beach while they were trying to take it away for their own ventures. The next stepping stone. We had to develop some product. No good having a property there without something worthwhile to offer. So we had to design the courses, and I must say that there wasn't any just one course. When I look around the room here today, many organisations, many cultures, many different people, we needed to design programs that fitted the culture of the company. And then ultimately they ended up as one-day programs, 2 or 3 day programs, anything up to a week, mostly on site, but we managed to explore all around Sri Lanka and offer the programs island-wide. Staff development. We've got the property, we've got the programs, now we need people, qualified people to operate the programs. So we started from really a green field where we took in a lot of locals and started training them up in what we needed to have as really our local experts. That developed, as you can understand, through time, and that took a little bit of time. We had to have our own people. We had our own Adventure Asia team. And here's some of the originals that started with me. And we had a mixture of foreign people and locals, each with a job to do. And they passed on, our foreign, sort of more experienced staff, slowly passed on their experience in training up others. Next was building a reputation, product and innovation. One of our products, and I'm going to run through these reasonably quick. I think the slides will tell most of the story. We started adventure races. One was with Yes FM, the Urban Challenge. A great event promoted through the radio station, brought a lot of people in, some nice high adventure, but it was mixed, rafting, zip lines, on-ground activities, giant ladder, mountain biking. And then we moved on to one of our premium products, which we came into the country with an absolute focus on delivering, and this was hot air ballooning. We pioneered commercial hot air ballooning in the country. Before then, there had been nothing in the skies above Sri Lanka. If you can imagine coming out of a civil war, the last thing the Air Force wanted to see was foreign objects flying around in the skies. And I remember a vivid moment where we were struggling to get the permissions to fly. I had this big 16-person balloon, which is pictured here, a 350,000 cubic metre of balloon that was as big as a 10-storey building. And I was told by the commander of the Air Force, "You will never get to fly in this country, it'll be over my dead body." Well, we had a little bit of news for him. And I had a meeting with the Prime Minister. I remember going to Temple Trees. There was this massive long mahogany table. He was sitting at one end, I was sitting at the other, and he said, "Peter, what's the problem?" I said, "Sir, we're not able to get the balloon in the sky." He said, "Why?" I said, "I think it's the Air Force commander." He got him on the phone immediately, set the story straight, and within a couple of months we were in the air. So we had our historic flights. The first one, in fact, was over Sigiriya. We had a later flight toward, some years in with our ballooning, a historic flight over Colombo, which again was a one-off thing. Again, the armed forces were a little bit nervous about this. Dambulla became our major flight destination. And we also conducted a number of flights out of Galle. Today, hot air ballooning is well established and well known in the country, and you will see it in all the promotional tourism material. Mountain biking, bike tours, and here we are. We started up biking tours across the island. We weren't the first. In fact, the master of this is sitting at the table right here in front of me, Peter Bluck. He was the first one. He was the pioneer of getting these sorts of things, mountain biking and cycling off the ground in the country. We followed on and we developed a number of tours around the country, really exploring a number of the beautiful tea estates, which I can tell you from a mountain biker's viewpoint were just first class and offered just fabulous scenery and biking trails. When I arrived in the country and did our reconnaissance around the island, what amazed me was the amount of rock, this incredible sort of monstrous rocks that were around the island, and we didn't see anybody climbing. It was almost unknown. So we thought, what a great asset in the country. We started our climbing activities. And next, that led into how do we offer climbing to the mass market? So we built a mobile climbing wall. Here it is on the back of the truck, something that could be transported anywhere, installed, and run climbing events. In fact, what we did was, as one of our sort of events promoted through, I think it was again Yes FM or one of the radio stations, was we had an island-wide climbing competition, which attracted thousands of people, and we brought the winners of each competition from around the country into Colombo for the final. This is the wall erected, again on our property at Hunwella. These are, I think, some of the finalists that made it in and climbed off for the grand finale. We ended up building indoor climbing walls at schools, and we created an outdoor climbing wall which was open to the public in central Colombo, and so we're able to get climbing as an activity kicked off in the country. High rope challenges, there was high ropes, there was low ropes. One of our first activities was to build and install a giant ladder. Took you a long way up into the trees. How many of you have ever been on the giant ladder? There we are, a number of you still, and you're still alive and here. We did some high rappelling off some big rocks and down into canyons. We took the rope activities to different places around the country, Burma Bridge, and it fitted in beautifully with a number of the courses that we're operating. Remembering that Sri Lanka had been challenged with the civil war, there wasn't a lot of people coming into the country at that time. We had the idea, how can we promote the country outside within that adventure environment? I'd been involved with Nat Geo in the past. I gave them a call and we got a crew of people into the country from Nat Geo channel. And we created a 5-part mini-series that was specifically for US television. So we designed it, we took them to different places around the island and did some absolute one-off activities. This is a picture of abseiling off the top of Lakshapana waterfall. I found a river down the south end of the island with some big rivers pouring into it. I needed to find a waterfall, and the idea was to have a first descent, meaning the first time that a kayak had ever paddled over a waterfall and down into the canyon. So we had our specialists there from Nat Geo. We filmed it all. That was one of the mini-series. More pictures from the Lakshapana abseil. River challenges. The Kalani River delivered us so many opportunities. Also at Kitulgala, it was a great playground for a lot of activities. And I think every one of you that have been part of an adventure-based training would be familiar with river activities, and you could be very creative about what you did, but always with safety in mind. These were some of our safety kayakers. Some faces there you might be familiar with. It was always a good way to finish off a program at the end of the day, bathing in the river. River crossings. That's our beautiful river at the time at Hunwella with the beach. School programs was a natural progression. After we had everything managed, we took in some young souls, which were also looking for adventure. These kids were amazing. I remember standing at the top of a rock with a massive abseil, and these kids were going off the edge like they were absolutely born naturals. It was inspiring to see. We ran a lot of programs for the international schools, worked our way into some of the local schools, including Gateway International. Amazingly, out of this picture here, some of the faces, I could pick probably 5 people out of here that years later came back to us and became some of our facilitators. Team challenges. It wasn't always about being out on the water or up on the rock or in the river. We had to design a number of team challenges that we could explore and develop change within teams on the property itself. We developed some very innovative games, focus rings, safety nets, also rock climbing, on rappel, having your teammates support you, trust falls, just fun activities. This is on top of the rock with some groups. Use the beach area. We had yoga, we had exercise programs, campfires, a whole range of things that the river was just, the beach was perfectly suited for. Trust fall again. One of our participants from HSBC. Different games, different challenges. One of our large groups from HSBC, I know that the man sitting there in the middle with a green shirt on happens to be sitting in the room here with us today. Equipment and safety had to be a key priority. It was no longer possible to work with second-hand equipment or outdated equipment, and for us to really hit the mark and deliver a safe program, and I can proudly say that we also had a zero injury history, and so we needed good equipment. Your figure of eights, your ropes, your carabiners, your harnesses, your cables, climbing helmets. Everything that we installed needed to be good and really of an international standard, internationally certified. What we didn't want to see was anything like this. There comes a time with every piece of equipment, no matter how much it costs, when it ages and you need to retire the equipment. Ropes are in the dirt, in the water, subject to the weather. They stretch, they break down, and there comes a time when you need to retire equipment. There'll always be another job for them, but not when someone's life is at the other end of it. So what makes a great program? Well, leading into a program, you always want to have your aims and goals. We used to go to the organisations themselves 1 or 2 weeks out from a program and have participants set their goals for why they were coming to the program. That also assisted us in finally designing the program to be able to meet their needs. Every company has its own culture. Every company has its own issues. They were tailored programs. Now, what I've seen over the years, and I think you'd all be aware of, is there can be just a good day out. Getting a group of people, bit of bonding, go out, have some food, have a great time. Does that really deliver change? Is it a lasting change? No, I don't think so. I think there's a specific way to deliver real change. And I'll just put on a flip chart here as to what my thinking is about that. So I use this flip chart many times in our trainings, and what it says is for things to change, first, who must change? First, I must change. See, it's not out there. It's always back with us. And if we were to go into a training program thinking someone else is going to do it for you, you're on the wrong line. We had to encourage people to get this concept of for things to change, first they had to change. I think it's a lifelong principle. Oh, I think we've jumped. Yeah. Just go back a little there. And for me, I had this saying that life is found at the edge. When you are at the edge, life is definitely pretty exciting. Would you agree? Yeah, but it's not easy to always take ourselves to the edge, right? So this was another well-known flip chart that I would use in our programs. And I know some of you know the answer, and I'll invite you to give me a quick answer. What do you think the circle is around the person? I know, no one's going to speak up. And it's our comfort zone, right? And this is where the learnings really take place. If we can take ourselves to that edge and finally cross the line and step out of our comfort zone, that's where everything starts to change. See, it's an amazing thing. And it's not anything that we do naturally from day to day to keep taking ourselves outside the comfort zone. You can sit in any sort of class and be very comfortable, walk away and say, how much did I learn? But we have these training programs which also have the name of experiential learning. You experience the learning. And when you step outside this comfort zone, suddenly everything starts to change. Here we are. All right, get back to this. And there is a scientific term for it. What happens to the brain when we step outside the comfort zone? And it's called perturbation. It's where the brain starts to vibrate. You feel uncomfortable, and you suddenly start searching for the answers. You know you don't have the answers, but are you at risk? You think that you are. How am I going to get down that rock? How am I going to reach the other side of the river? How am I going to find the answer to this problem? And suddenly what happens is the brain explodes. These neurons in the brain start to expand, light up, fire up, and they start to find connections all around the brain in their thousands. And suddenly, spontaneously, the answer comes. And so that was the basis to our programs, to take people outside their comfort zone and start to have this sort of concept of perturbation take place. So what is the anatomy of change? Well, I saw on many occasions, the buses would arrive at the property. They'd be getting out and starting to come onto the grass in front of the beach, and I knew not all of them wanted to be there. The company had said they should be there. They'd paid the money for them to be there, but did they really want to be there? A lot of them, yes. Sometimes, no. But we're talking about a team. You needed to get total buy-in from everyone in the team to make it valuable and worthwhile. How did we get the buy-in? Well, right there, people were faced with either I stick with the old way or I can find the new way. Now, we just finished a CEO's sort of summit this morning with some of your bosses, and there was a discussion panel going on, and what was realised is we're in a new time right now, and if you don't have the ability to be flexible and deal with change, then, we're really the dinosaurs here. So we need to train ourselves up to be willing. And I did this on so many occasions that stepping outside my comfort zone became almost a lifestyle, because that is where life is found. But how do you get the buy-in? It was through trust. And that was done in small steps. I remember on one program, it was a bank program. People arrived on day one, and I heard through a little bit of conversation that there was a girl on the program who had lost 16 members of her family in the tsunami. And I think she knew that we were running rafting activities. A big tick, one, that she got herself to the property to be part of it, and two, she was going to have to go through this big time in order to get herself in the water. I was hugely proud of her, couldn't believe it. But again, this is the value in teamwork, because it wasn't just her, the whole team rallied together to get her through that difficult time. But to get her there, we needed to build trust. Little things like starting off with trust falls. Games, lots of games. We play games right through the program. Any idea why we play a game? The reality is our barriers come down. Suddenly we think that we're kids again. Oh, this will be fun. I can forget work. I can relax. This is just a game. But the question is, for you, are you any different now and at work than when you are playing a game? I don't think so. You're still the same person. You still have the same characteristics. You still have the same prejudices. You still have the same beliefs. However, in that moment, when we put you into a game, that wall comes down. And our facilitators have the opportunity to observe and see what's going on. And that is where some of the real learnings take place. By being able to observe, so we continue on with the trust. And the gradient is important. Like I said, no point putting someone into a rafting activity where they feel threatened. And the interesting fact was, I found out on these programs that something like 70 to 80% of Sri Lankans couldn't swim on an island. It's interesting. And so we needed to be very careful about the learning gradient. And in order to get them onto the rock and abseiling 100 metres down, or get them in the water, we needed to build this up gradually and build trust. So trainers need to lead from the front. And I'm not saying that it needs to be the facilitator that's in the water first or leading the way up the rock. I'm talking about the emotional support of the facilitator. The trainer guides groups. The teams find the solution. If it goes the other way around, if the trainer thinks he's doing them a favour by giving them the answer, we've lost the plot. Because it's that concept of perturbation pushing them, stressing them to find the answer to the problem. And suddenly, that's where the answers come from. So the facilitator needs to have that level of tough love. Be prepared to wear the heat in the conversation and the debriefing in order to get the breakthroughs. They've got to hold the space. They need to be pretty big and take sometimes a bit of abuse or disagreement and say, well, hey, what did you do in that case? What did you contribute to the team's outcome? What could you have done differently? But again, we've got this trusted environment where people understand it's being done for the right reason. The debrief's vitally important. Dissect the game, pull it apart, discover what is the learning. It's beyond the blame game. For things to change, first I must change. It's not about pointing the finger, it's about what am I doing? Taking responsibility for the outcomes, the wins and the losses. Putting your hand up and say, this is what I will do. This is what my contribution will be. And not always sitting back for everybody else. Or do we just give you a little pat on the back and say, wow, good job. Did a good job, but you know you're cheating them by not seeing it through to the end, right? So where are we up to now? I've told you the story. We're here at the summit. I'm absolutely privileged to be the first speaker on the stage. And Shea Adventures, when I left Sri Lanka, they took up the property. And I must say that that torch has been handed on, and that torch is certainly burning bright. And I think for all of you, seeing what has already occurred today, and we still have a lot ahead of us, you'll be pleased with what you hear. There's been solid gains made over the past years. The infrastructure that's been built on the property and what's offered is first class. They have a very progressive culture. There's new initiatives just like this summit, and I think we're all going to learn something. They've got the foresight, they've done the planning, huge investment. There's a massive commitment, which is very obvious to everyone. And there's a very bright future for them, and I'd say for you in their hands. And from me, thank you very much.